Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode from the RPA Vanguard channel. My name is Andy Menon. This is a completely unplanned video on OpenAI. Let's get started. So last week, I had made a video on how to use the OpenAI integration service connector from UiPath, right? In that video, there was one of the topics that I spoke about in length, and that topic was titled, or that chapter was titled, Tokens, Questions, and Confusion, right? And I spoke at length about some of the things that I ran into when it comes to measuring the metrics of my prompt and completion request response cycle. Right, I was measuring the amount of tokens that it would cost me before I send the request, but then when I placed the request, I got a completely different number, right? So there were some questions that were kind of bugging me, since I began working on OpenAI APIs, right? Now, this video is independent of the fact that whether you're going to be using the UiPath OpenAI integration service connector, or whether you're going to be using Python, or whether you're going to be using, C#. Regardless of that, right? I wanted to share some of the things that I experienced when I was, when I was reading through the OpenAI documentation, and then I saw something, and then I started tinkering with the tick token APIs, and then I liked what I saw, right? So herein comes the disclaimer, right? The findings in this video are basically a result of tinkering. I'm tinkering with stuff. And as you're tinkering, the results of that tinkering operation is not always guaranteed, right? It can be a great result, or it can be a terrible result, or it can be something midway, right? We don't know, right? So basically, I'm going to walk through what I did this morning, and then I'm going to share it with you. And then it's up to the community to take it and run with it. And then there are several outcomes, right? One of the outcomes is you might come back to me and say, hey, this completely sucks. There are other ways to do this, more accurate way to do this. And yeah, sure, if that is good, that's more accurate, please do let me know how to do that, because this is a learning experience for all of us, right? On the other side, right, you might say, okay, this looks good, this looks more reliable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to understand how many tokens it's going to cost me when I'm going to send a request out there. And if I come to know that my request is going to cost me more tokens than I think it must cost me, I'll go back and rework my tokens, or rework my prompts, to send a better request, right? And at the same time, not have my response compromised. All right, so I am in the Visual Studio Code environment. This is the Python virtual environment that I have created in Visual Studio Code. You might not need this setup, but you might already have this setup. But at the minimum level, you might have to use Python 3.8 or higher. Not you might, you have to use Python 3.8 or higher. Otherwise, I don't think the tick token library is going to work, right? And then you would need to install OpenAI library, then install tick token. And then there is a configuration file that I have already shared with the content of the previous video, right? There's a downloadable link in the previous video that I released last week. And you implement that file because you can put in your API key and your org key that you'll require to connect to OpenAI's APIs, right? If you're going to be running an API request from an environment like Python, or an environment like C# or any other environment where you're doing API access, right? So putting those entries in a separate file will prevent you from exposing them in your script and sharing your API keys with someone accidentally, right? Basically, the script here is what I worked on this morning. but I want to go back into the background of why I did that in the first place, right? So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down here and look at this question or this prompt here, right? I was reading the OpenAI documentation, and I ran into an example that demonstrates the use of this question you see here, right? What's 1 plus 1? Answer in one word. I was looking at it and said, can I make this much shorter? So the idea here was to, again, go back to that question I had from last week, right? Can I make this better? Right? If I ask a shorter question, can I get the same response? And will it cost me lesser tokens? Right? So what I did was I wrote this alternate prompt, right? And I said, you can see this one word, 1 plus 1 with a question mark, right? What is it? As usual is the case, I always work with a tokenizer. So I started with the tokenizer. I took this question there and I put it in the, I don't know if I have the tokenizer open, but I think I can get to it from here. And then I plugged in the original text from that example, 11 tokens. Okay. You see, punctuations cost you tokens, right? If I add the punctuation back, it's going to cost you an extra token, right? Similarly, I think the question mark is also going to cost you tokens. And then I thought, can I make this better? So I went back to the other question I created. I took this and then I plugged it back in to the tokenizer. 7 tokens. That's 4 tokens less, right? Keep this in mind, 4 tokens less. It might not mean a lot right now, but just keep that in mind. The next question on my list was, okay, I altered the question. It looks the same. For intuitive human beings, it looks the same, right? The longer question and the shorter question looks the same, but will I get a satisfying response from the model, right? Now, if this question is going to change the outcome of your response or change the outcome, then this is not a good way to write the question, right? This prompt is then meaningless, because then if the large language model comes back with a completely different answer, then all of this is absolutely useless, right? As usual is the case, like I demonstrated last time, what I did was I ran a couple of tests in measuring the number of tokens that I'm going to get back. Right, so here is the function. I have actually shared this with you in the previous video as well. You could use that, but this is the most recent and the most latest. And I would prefer that you look at this one for the reasons that I have changed it a little bit, right? So when I got the when I got the actual token count from TikToken, and then when I read through the function itself, a couple of things actually caught my attention, right? The first one here is the original TikToken function, as seen from the documentation, pegs this number of tokens at 4, right? And the comment is that the number of tokens that you're going to be consuming, that's 4 tokens consumed for every request, because each message starts with the role, the name, right? And it ends with this format, right? Here you can see every message follows start, the role or the name, the content, and ends, right? So if you look at the message structure, it looks like this, right? Role, user, content, right? So what I did was I took the role, user, and content and plugged it into the tokenizer, and it returned me 6 tokens. But this says 4, right? So what I did was I changed this to 6, right? So that's the first change. Of course, this requires no change, because if your message format contains a key called name, then that is completely ignored. and then one token is actually deducted from the number of tokens that you're actually burning through, right? So we're going to leave that alone. Then comes the response side of it. Now, this is the part that that I overlooked, I think, last week. Here it says every reply is primed with IM start assistant, right? Start with assistant. And if you look at the responses from my testing, here is the response. It starts with assistant, right? Okay, so there it is, right? The role is assistant. So I took that and I put it in the tokenizer, and it gave me 3 tokens, right? So I changed this from 2 to 3, right? So actually this comment is wrong. I must correct that. So the next thing that I did was I started to test just the tick token part of it, not actually sending the request out to the to OpenAI, right? So when I did the measurement for the longer test or the longer question and compared it with the shorter question, tick token came back with a couple of responses. For the longer question, it told me that I'm going to consume a total of 22 tokens. And then for the shorter message, I'm going to consume a total of 18 tokens. You see there again a difference of 4 tokens, right? And once I got the count, I decided to actually turn on the API and then send that prompt out, right, to the large language model. But I think I sent the shorter one first, and then I sent the longer one next. The reason I'm not going to run it again is because I ran into these intermittent, rate errors, right? And I think there is a lot of demand. And as I was running it, I started getting this error. So what I did was I saved the results of my request response cycles into Notepad++. So I'm going to scoot over to that and show you, the request response, and we are going to compare the results of what tick token actually measured without sending the response, without sending the request, right? So the beauty of tick token is you can measure your request response without actually sending it to the model, right? That means it doesn't cost you any tokens, but you can get a count of how many tokens that's going to cost you, right? So we are going to take the results of tick token, the measurement made by tick token, and compare it to the actual tokens that were consumed when you sent these requests or prompts over to OpenAI, right? So I am going to switch to the notes here. And this is the reason why I did not want to run this when I'm recording, because I wanted to spare you the agony of running into frequent errors. So this is the first test, right? And you can see that it is for the question that is shortened as much as possible, and it warrants a single word answer. That means I'm not expecting my test to give me a wrong result because I asked the question in a shorter manner. And I'm also expecting that the answer is one word, right? So this is the prompt, one word. What is 1 + 1? And tick token gave me a measurement of 18 prompt tokens counted. And then I actually sent the response, or sent the prompt, and got the response back from OpenAI, the GPT-3. So we know that the model is GPT 3.5 Turbo. Here is the actual measurement. This is the response that I got. Interested usable response from ChatGPT is 2 with the punctuation, right? 2 full stop. So I used 16 tokens to send my prompt. Even though my word was my answer, or the response, or the completion that I got back from OpenAI was a one-word answer, it still used 2 tokens. And that is because it is 2 followed by a full stop. Remember what I said at the beginning of this video, a full stop punctuation costs you a token, right? And therefore, it cost me 2 tokens for the completion. And then the total tokens amounted to 16 plus 2, 18. Looking at the measurement by tick token, which is 18, and looking at the actual results sent back by the OpenAI large language model, I kind of thought that, this is less confusing than what I faced last week, right? So obviously, the next thing for me to do was to perform the second test, right? And that second test was to send the longer question, right? And this prompt is a bit longer than the first, but it still is the same question and warrants an identical response, right? I cannot say it identical. I'll tell you why. It still warrants a similar response, right, from the large language model. So this is the longer question, right? What's 1 plus 1? Answer in 1 word. Remember, you're specified answer in 1 word, right? And the response that came back was interesting. First, tick token measured that I'm going to be spending or burning through 22 tokens. And then this is where I was looking to see if all the changes I had made to the tick token function is going to pay off or not, right? I was a bit nervous about that. And then when I got the response back, it said, you have burned through 22 tokens for the longer question, right? So the prompt token is 20. Instead of 16, you have spent now 20 tokens. So the difference between 20 and 16, again, is the 4 tokens. The completion token is 2, and the total tokens is 22. But here's the funny part, right? The content is 2 followed by a full stop. It's a number, a digit 2 followed by a full stop, even though you ask the model to respond in a single word, right? But there is not much in terms of the tokens that you've burnt through, right? You got the answer as a single word, although it's a number, and the response cost you only 2 tokens, regardless of which test you performed. But what you spent your tokens on was the prompt, right? You spent 4 extra tokens on the prompt to get the same answer back. You see what I'm trying to say here? The first test was a shorter question. That means your inputs cost you less than the second test, where the input cost you more for the same kind of response that you could understand. So your input expenditure on the second test was much more than the first. And therefore, it's very, very important to think about how we are going to shape our questions, right? Or shape our prompts, right? When we send out a request to a large language model, right? If you can run this before you actually send your prompts out to OpenAI, that might help you get a better sense of how many tokens that you're going to be burning for your prompt and completion cycle. And if the results are accurate, that's important, right? In this case, the tick token measurement matched with the actual results sent back by the GPT-3 model, right? But will the results be the same when you use it? If not, please let me know. But at this point, like I said, it is just a learning experience, and it is an outcome of a tinkering operation. And therefore, the community can contribute to this and see how it could be fine-tuned, or if there is a better solution, right? The next thing that we're going to talk about is that token difference of 4, right? Now you might come back and say, hey, that's just 4 tokens. What's the big deal, right? What's the big deal? So here's a problem with that. Let us say that you're running a business that's powered by OpenAI, right? That's powered by any kind of a large language model, and where it's going to cost you considerable amount of pennies to send out your prompts. Let us say that you have not optimized your prompt, and you are sending out 1 million requests over a period of time. Now, I don't know what that period of time is. It might be in a month. It might be in in a week, it might be in a year, I don't know. Regardless of that, let us say that you are sending out 1 million prompts out to GPT, right? So this is GPT-3 we are looking at, right? The model that we used in this whole exercise is GPT 3.5 Turbo. And this is how much it costs you for every 1,000 tokens. Now, if you have not optimized your 1 million requests, and each request has got an excess of 4 tokens that you have not optimized, right? If we pull out our calculator, that is 4 million extra tokens that you have sent out when you placed a request to your model, right? So that's 4 million tokens. For 1 million requests, you sent out 4 million extra tokens that don't need to be there. Now, if you look at the pricing model, it is 1,000th of a dollar. Is that what I read? Yeah, 2,000th of a dollar, right? For every 1,000 tokens, right? So we divide this by 1,000. That is 4,000 billing units, because the billing units is 1,000 tokens, right? So that's 4,000 1K token units, billing units. And then you multiply that by 0.00. That's $8. That's $8 additional that you spent for 1 million requests for all those extra tokens you sent there. Now, again, $8 is not a big deal, right? You might still laugh at it. Okay. Now, let us say that we are going to the next level, right? We are going to upgrade from model 3.5 to GPT-4, right? And here is the pricing model for GPT-4. And if we look at that pricing model, again, it might not look much, right? If you look at it from, just as literal numbers, it might not look much. But if you look at the comparison here, the price per 1,000 tokens for an 8K context, right? To maintain a context of 8,000, that limit, it is $0.03, right? That is 15 times more than the current rate for GPT 3.5, right? So if I keep that $8 aside and then I say 0.03 divided by 0.002, that is 15 times. And now you multiply the 15. Let us say you upgrade from GPT 3 to 4, and you multiply the $8 by 15. That's $120 if you send your unoptimized prompt out there to GPT-4. And if you upgrade to a larger context of 32K, that is twice of the 8K content, right? 0.03 times 2 is 0.06. So it goes up to $240 for the tokens that had no business to be there in the first place, right? Those 4 tokens. It might be 2 tokens or it might be 50 tokens, right? And therefore, it is very, very important that we understand if we can simplify our prompts without having to compromise our responses, right? So this is just a learning kit, just a test kit. And I don't know whether the results of this can be confirmed by someone, but I just wanted to run the numbers to see how much it might cost me, right? If it's a small business, or if you are a one-man shop, $240 a month, and if you're sending 1 million requests a month, is still a considerable expense, because if you multiply that over a year, that is still a considerable expense for a small business, right? And therefore, it's very, very important that we try to shape our prompts to as much as we can without compromising on the results of what we are trying to do when using our large language model. So that's all for this video, and I hope you learned something new and it will give you something to experiment with. Please feel free to measure your tokens and then or measure your prompt tokens and then try playing around with this and see how accurate these results are. And I hope it definitely helps. And I hope whatever I've done today is something that we can use. If not, please let me know. And I'm very keen to learn. And I hope you liked the content. And if you did, please do like and subscribe to this channel. I'll truly appreciate it. Thank you. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.